Alright, hi and welcome to another very exciting episode of the Android video tutorial series. I'm your host Matthias Reich, and as promised in the last episode, today we're going to take a look at radio buttons. Now, to give you an idea of what we will be creating today, I'm going to show you an example. So here we have our application, and as you can see we have some main area here and 4 radio buttons and 4 labels, 4 colored labels. And if we check those radio buttons, you can see that that main area here gets colored accordingly to what we have selected below here. And so, red, green, blue, and gray. Alright, so this is what we will be creating today, and I'll show you how it's done. So here we are in Eclipse, and to save time I've already created a new project. I called it Radio Buttons, and I also created a few string resources to save some time. As you can see here, I have here the labels for the colors, red, green, blue, and gray, and the label for the main area that says current pick, and we will need those when we create our layout, which we'll do right now. So go to your main XML, and as you can see I deleted that text view which is created by default when you create a new project, so I'm just left with a linear layout. With that set up like this, we can start creating our own custom layout. So the first thing we want to do is we want to create that main area where it says current pick, and that is a text view. So I'll create a text view, and I set the layout width to fill parent and the layout height to fill parent as well. And then we have a new attribute today, which is the layout weight. And the layout weight defines how much space that element takes up on screen. We have here layout width and height set both to fill parent, and so we would expect that a text view would cover the whole screen. But if we also set the layout weight attribute and add some stuff below that text view, for example our radio buttons, then it will actually use like a major part of the screen, but still leave some room for that radio buttons below. So it's a bit hard to explain, but you will see how it works when we get to those colored labels, because there we will use that layout weight also, and I'll show you how that affects the size and the scale of those colored labels. So for now we just set the layout weight to 1. Alright, then for the text we want to actually use our label, our string resource, and I called that current pick. Alright, then for the text color I want to set it to white, and you can do that by using a pound sign and then that notation you would use for HTML or CSS. If you ever did HTML or CSS before, you know exactly what that means. So we'll type FF, and that is the hexadecimal code for white, right? And also, when we first start up that application, we want to set the background to a dark gray, right? And also we want to have that text that says current pick, we want to position that in the middle of that text view. And so we use gravity, and set that gravity to center. And so now that that text will appear in the middle of the screen, or sorry, in the middle of the text view. All right, so we can close that off, and instead of using that close angle bracket, we could use the short notation, which is / close angle bracket. Right? Because we don't need that end tag, because we don't want to include something into that text view. All right. So now that's our text view. We can save that. And when you switch to that graphical user interface designer, you can actually see that it now covers the whole screen, and in the middle it says current pick. All right. So far, so good. So just switch back to the main XML. And next, we want to actually create a linear layout below that text view. So type linear layout, and of course we want to set the layout width to fill parent, and the layout height we want to set to wrap content. And since we want to position those color labels next to each other, we want to actually set the orientation to horizontal. All right, so you can close that, and now inside that linear layout, we want to create our first label, our first color label, and we'll do that by creating another text view. And just layout width is equal to fill parent, and Android layout height is equal to, and now we want to specify an exact size, because we want them to be real thin. So I'll choose 20 dp, and dp, we covered that in the last episode. Those are the density independent pixels, and there I forgot the quotes. So for the layout height, we say 20 dp, which are 20 density independent pixels. All right, so then we want to add the layout weight again, and we want to set that to 1. And then we want to set the text to string, and I call that string resource color red, because this is our color label for the red color. And we want to set the text color. All right, and I want to set that to a dark red, right? And so I choose 660000, and for the background color, I want to actually choose full bright red, so this is FF0000. All right, and finally, for the gravity, we want to set that again to center. All right. All right, so now we can actually close that off. And now we have to create 3 more text views inside that linear layout, and I'll do that by just copying this one time, 2 time, 3 time, and then just change the parameters. So we want to come to the second one here, and this will have the text color green, and I want to change the text color to be a dark green, and the background should be a bright green, and so that's okay for that. And the third one is color blue. I want to change that color to 000066, and for the background we have 0000FF, and the last one is color gray, and I'll change the text color to CC, which is a bright gray, and the background, actually I want to change that to 666666. Alright, so now we can save that, and if you switch to that graphical layout, you can now see that we have actually our labels down here. And now you can also see that despite the fact that this current pick text view was set to fill parent, it now uses less space because we set that layout weight to 1, so it made some room for what's defined below that. Alright, so next thing we want to do, we want to create our radio buttons. So we'll come down here below that linear layout that holds our color labels, and then we want to create a radio group. And this is important because the nature of radio buttons is that you can only select one button, unlike checkboxes where you can check 1, 2, or none. With radio buttons you can only select one radio button at a time. And to make sure that this behavior is maintained, you have to wrap all radio buttons inside a radio group. So we want to create a radio group, and with those radio groups, they are very similar to linear layouts. So what we want to do is we want to type Android layout width equals to fill parent, Android layout height equals to wrap content, and the orientation actually is horizontal because we want to position those radio buttons next to each other, right? So we can close that off, and then we're ready to create our radio buttons. Now actually one thing we can add is a nice background color to that panel that holds our radio buttons, and I want to set that to 333333. Alright, so now let's create our first radio button, and we want to set the layout width to, fill parent, Android layout height, I want to set that to wrap content, Android layout weight, same as above, we want to set that to 1, and then we want to set a left margin so that the radio button is centered under that colored label, and you can do that by specifying the attribute layout margin left, and I want to set that to 24 dp. That should align nicely. And the last thing we want to do is, because we want to have access to those radio buttons from our Java source code, we want to give each radio button an ID. And for this, I want to actually give it plus, oh, I'm sorry, plus ID, and then radio red. All right, and I can close that off. And so now I need, again, 3 more, so I'll just copy that and I paste it in 3 times. All right, and then I'll make my modifications. So the second radio button will get the ID radio green, and the third one is radio blue, and the last one is actually radio gray. All right, so you can save that, and now if you switch over, you can actually see that we have our layout all set, except for one thing. As you can see, none of that radio buttons is selected. But as you can see, by default, or when we launch our application, that current pick text view has a dark gray background. So we would expect that the radio button for the dark gray color is pre-selected. And we can do that by going back to our main XML. And for that gray radio button, we can add Android. And then the very first attribute here, checked, and that is equal to true. Save that, and now you can see that the gray radio button is pre-selected. Alright, that's all we have to do in our layout. So now we can go to our source code and start coding. Alright, so here we are in our Java source code. And let me just, twirl that down. So we want to start coding, and the first thing we want to do is we want to create some global variables. All right. The first one is I want to create an on-click listener, and call that radio listener. And the thing with radio buttons is that I want to create one on-click listener, and I want to reuse it for each radio button. So I don't have to write 4 on-click listeners that actually would do the very same thing. All right. So our first global variable is that on-click listener, and of course we need to import it. Now it gives you 2 options here, and you want to choose the first one, which is in the package Android view with a capital V. Just click it. And second global variable is actually a text view, and I want to call that TV pick. And this holds our current pick. And again, just import that text view. And then you want to come down into that onCreate function. And below everything, the first thing I want to do is I want to actually create that on-click listener. All right. So I'll just type radio listener equals new on-click listener, open parentheses, close parentheses, and then open curly brace, and it automatically creates a closed curly brace. So behind that, just add a semicolon. And then if you hover over that on-click listener, you can select add unimplemented methods. And we did that before. I guess it was in episode number 3. And just click it. So the first thing we want to do is we want to take care of our parameter here, view v. which is the view object that has been clicked on. Alright, and since we know that this has to be a radio button, we want to simply cast that parameter to a radio button. So to do that, type radio button RB is equal to open parentheses radio button close parentheses V semicolon. Alright, so we simply cast that view object to a radio button and assign it to our local variable RB. Now, as you can see, it gives us an error. That's because we need to import that radio button widget, and now we're fine. Alright, so next we want to actually determine which radio button has been clicked on. So to do that, we'll use a switch case statement, and we'll type switch open parentheses RB dot get ID. Alright, so this gives us the ID of that radio button that has been clicked on. It's the same ID we defined in our XML layout. Alright, so for the blue radio button, for example, that ID would be radio underscore blue. Alright, so just open curly brace, close curly brace, it's automatically added, and then type case capital R dot ID dot radio read. So what this does is, in case that ID we get from that method called getID is equal to our ID radio read, that is the ID we defined in our main XML, in our layout, then we want to do something. And what we're going to do is we want to set the background color of that current pick text view. So we'll type TV pick dot set background color, and then it expects an integer, and we can actually use a method to generate our color. So type color with a capital C dot, and then the helper function parse color. Alright, and to that method we can actually parse a string which has the same format as our color strings in our main XML, like those HTML CSS strings. So type pound and ff 0000, close it off, then we can add a semicolon, and after that we type break semicolon. Alright, this is our code for the red radio button. Alright, so we need 3 more, so I'll just copy that and paste it in 3 times. Right, and then for the second line I want to change that to green, third one to blue, and the fourth one to gray, and then of course change the colors accordingly. So this one would be 00FF00, third one 0000FF, and the last one is 6666 and 66. Alright, so that's basically all we need to do in our onClick method. So what we need to do now is we need to assign that radio listener to our radio buttons, and we'll do that by coming down here under that end curly brace, and the first thing actually we want to do is assign that text field, that current pick text field, to our global variable. So type TV pick is equal to open parentheses text view, and then find view by ID. Open parentheses r dot id dot, and now we can see that we actually forgot to give that text field an ID. So let's do that now. Let's come to the top here and just add an ID to our text field. So it's a new ID, and I call that current pick, right? And we can save that, come back, and so now we have it here in our list. So we can choose current pick and then add a semicolon. Alright, so that's that. Since we're not dealing with those radio buttons in any other way except within that radio listener, we don't need them to be global variables. So it's enough if there are local variables. So just create a radio button and call it RB red, and this is equal to radio button. Find view by ID r dot id dot radio red. And now the important thing is to add that on click listener to that radio button. So type rb red dot set on click listener, and we want to set that to radio listener. All right, and finish that line with a semicolon, and that's all we need to do for that red radio button. So of course we need that 3 more times, so just copy and paste it and then quickly change it to green, blue, and gray, and up here also radio green, radio blue, and radio gray. Alright, so I forgot to change those. Alright, RB green, RB blue, and RB gray. So this is all we had to do, and now we can actually take a look at that application and launch it. So just click on that green arrow, choose to run it as an Android application, and then click OK. Alright, so here we are in our Android emulator, and this is our application. As you can see, it has a dark gray background here, and the radio button for that gray color is also pre-selected. And now if we click on the blue, that main pick here, that main text field turns to blue, green, red, and so forth. And you can only select one radio button at a time. You can see it here. And yeah, that's basically all there is to say about radio buttons for now. Well, I hope you found this tutorial useful, and if so, it would be nice if you would comment on the blog. If you have any questions, also write a comment. And if you enjoyed this episode, please share it on your favorite social bookmark platform, or tell your friends about this video tutorial series. I'm your host, Matthias Reich, and I'll see you next time.